Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our weekly Wednesday webinar. That's an illustration if ever I had one. Well, today is all about how you can deliver the perfect pitch. And we're really looking forward to this one because it's something that we feel very passionate about with regard to how we help you, our clients, actually pitch your proposition to your clients. Today's session is probably going to last 45 minutes. So hopefully you're all set for a 45-minute webinar. If not, then catch up on the recording later on because we'll be going on until we finish. There's a lot of ground to cover. I expect a lot of questions. If you can put those questions into the chat box, I will get to them at some point. As ever, if we don't cover your point during the meeting, we will make sure we answer them. I do recommend that you take notes today. As much as you can go back on the recording and pick up on some of the comments, we've got some things on screen. Inevitably, I know that from time to time, Paul will come up with a gem of a statement that we haven't documented or recorded anywhere. And someone will say, "What did you say?" And either here or I'll say, "I can't remember. It just came out and I don't know what it was, but it sounded really good." So make sure you are taking notes. And as I say, please do interact with us on the questions. We will get to them at some point. They pop up on my screen. But hey, I'm a bloke and I get easily distracted, so I might actually miss it, but we will do our best to get there. So it's all about, as I say, delivering the perfect pitch. That's not the right note. It's actually making sure that we actually get the right result with our clients. So what are we going to cover today? 5 areas for you. First of all, we're going to talk about preparing the pitch. So making sure that you've done, if you like, all your homework before you get to meet with the client. The introduction. So how can you set up your introduction to give yourself the best opportunity, the best chance to actually make sure your pitch is successful. We've called it the interrogation, which is a very strong word. Sometimes you would have heard us refer to it as the qualification or fact-finding section of the meeting. So again, Paul's going to take us through that specific piece. We'll talk about the demonstration, but we're not doing a demonstration today. We're not going into the platform and going through this, and this, but we're going to talk to you about the key points that you should be highlighting in the meeting, and importantly, close on that. Anything you want to cover over those 5 points that are up on screen there, Paul?
No, I think there's at the end of it, there's the follow-up, but that's all part of the close as well. We could have easily slid in another slide, I guess, there. But
well, good news, we did slide one in, but we just didn't put it on that particular bullet point. So yeah, we'll get it there. So good. Okay, we'll continue through. So the first part we're going to talk about is you preparing for your pitch. Now, what's important here is you don't take any shortcuts. Now is the time to get that preparation in place, and I'm sure you've heard the 6 P's and bits and pieces all about perfect planning and preparation prevents something about poor performance, which will on that part. But some of the things we want you to talk about, we want you to think about control and structure. So having a sales meeting with a client, it's really important you understand it's your meeting. Your prospect or your existing client has agreed to meet up with you because they believe there's something that you want to say to them that's going to be of interest to them, but it's your meeting. So make sure you control it. That means putting out an agenda. Yeah, an agenda can be as simple as having 3 basic points: your process, our process, next steps. And I've said to many of you before, I'm sure you can do a better agenda than that. But if it's just got those 3 basic points, you're going to cover most of the things how you do. And it's also going to show the client that you're actually structured. You're not just coming to have a chat and a coffee. It's not one of those types of things. So control and structure. And you thinking about the structure of your meeting as well. Get to know your prospect in terms of understanding who they are, finding out more about their company. A simple Google search. It can be as basic as that. Sometimes find out something's happening in the marketplace. Know your process. What do we mean by that? So we're about to take you through the process. This is part of the process, getting to know your process, but understanding what are the elements you want to cover so that you've actually got a core structure for your meetings that you know you're going to follow. And you might get taken away and to wander off track, but always, if you've got that core, you can always come back to it and get back on track and keep the meeting going at the right type of pace. And finally, this is all about you acting naturally. We're trying to give you some help and support and guidance, and I know Paul's happy to give some more support and guidance for you as well if you wish, on a one-to-one basis. But we're trying to give you some ideas. We're trying to give you some inspiration. We're not trying to turn you into parrots of what we say, but for you to pick up some certain bits and pieces. And when we go into the meat of the meeting today, what I'm really pleased about is, we're going to do this webinar the same way we always have done. But what I'm really looking for today from Paul Hickey is a great deal of his input, because what Paul is like what I hope most of you are, at the coalface. So you're getting somebody who's doing it. Well, it used to be day in, day out. It's maybe not so much day in, day out at the moment, Paul. Anything else, Paul, about prepping?
Well, it's really important. I mean, over the years, the reason that people fail in not just in recruitment but in sales is that they go in and they spill the beans way too early. You know, they don't understand what the problems are, what the challenges are, and they don't ask enough probing questions. They're not good at fact finding or interrogating, as we use that strong word here today. So making sure that you've got your house in order and understanding, as you said, that you're in control of the meeting. It's your meeting. They've got a problem. That's why you're there in the first place. So you need to command control from the beginning. Again, reiterating what you said, you should know your product. So if you are going into an iIntro demonstration, you need to know what the different elements of McQuaig mean, which report you're going to open next, what the key competency questions are that are coming, so on and so forth. Otherwise, you might fall flat on your face. And it's okay. I mean, it's okay not to get everything right. And it's really important to understand that I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pitches and trained people, and every single pitch is different. So I think it's our aim today to give people some ammunition, basically, to load up their arsenal. So as they go out into the world and pitch, you know, their recruitment as a business and the iIntro product, or whatever it's called within their own recruitment business, they can just pull out those little individual elements where they're needed and hopefully work it towards closing a deal.
Yeah, I think one of the things you said, Paul, that's interesting there is you've done hundreds and hundreds of these. And the whole point here is it's all about practice, and practice will make perfect. There's no substitute for the time served apprenticeship of actually, you know, putting this to the test until you refine it. But equally, I think one of the other things you sort of mentioned to me earlier, Paul, is no two pitches are the same. So, you know, you can role play them, whatever, but you've always got to be able to be a little bit agile and fleet of foot for any responses that are going to come in from the clients.
It's like that film, 50 First Dates. I don't know if people who will have seen it and they'll know what I mean. Never mind.
Gone right past me, that one has. Okay, so yeah, it's all about that. But I think with that practice, you know, what comes, you know, sometimes people say, well, you know, some people are born salespeople. Well, I actually believe it's not about being born a salesperson. It's about practice and putting the effort in to master your craft. You know, the craft of recruitment and the craft of how we sell is something that we can help and support you with. But it just takes that little bit of effort from yourselves. So, Paul, the introduction. So, why don't you walk us through, or talk us through, you know, the key points of your introduction, the time it sort of takes, and other bits and pieces that you want to share with us here.
Okay, so there's two ways to do an iIntro demonstration. I guess it's either face to face or it's online like we are now. But check the tech, and that means make sure that they can see what you see if you're screen sharing like this, or if you're giving them a login to your iIntro platform, then make sure that they've got that, because you don't want to be going into your presentation to find out that they're on a different page or something like that. So that's the first thing. Second thing, and really important, is you need to check how much time they have, because you might be under the impression that they've got an hour and they might have 20 minutes. You know, any less than that, and I think you want to be rescheduling. But it gives you an idea, and it's worth double checking. If they say, well, I've got 45 minutes, you know, if it runs over, do we actually have a full hour if needs be? And then you know where you are, so you can time your pitch accordingly. Building rapport, this is really important, because as you say here, people buy from people they like. So whether it's a typical icebreaker, it might be something about economics or politics at this moment in time. We know we should steer away from them, but it's difficult not to. But, you know, holidays, you know, did you have a holiday planned? And, you know, sometimes people like to have a little whinge as well at this point, and that's okay as well. But building rapport is really, really important, and you'll probably get onto some kind of a business element, and you can start here to deliver leading questions, which will come on to shortly. But nonetheless, it's important that you might want to start asking questions about their business at this moment in time. And hopefully, you know, one of the core principles of getting people to like you is asking damn good questions and letting them answer them. You don't always need to give feedback. You don't always need to give answers. You just keep asking further open questions. People talk to you and they go away from the meeting saying, oh, what a fantastic guy James was, because you let them talk. So I'd never say that. So no, look, that opening introduction should only last probably for 3 or 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes absolute tops, depending on how you're getting along with them. But that kind of sets the scene. It's a professional introduction for your meeting.
And I think, Paul, the point here we're trying to make is that, I think we all know the stat. For those of you in the UK, there are 30,000 other recruitment companies around there. So they've got lots of choice. So you've got to humanize it and personalize it because, as you say on the right there, people buy from people they like.
Yeah. And you might ask them, James, there, you might ask them a sort of a leading question in the building rapport section, which might be, how has your business changed in the last 2 or 3 months, and how do you expect things to develop moving forward? Are we going to go back to normal, or is it going to be something different? And start to get under the skin of what their thought process is at this moment in time. I think what you also need to do here, and this kind of moves you on to the next part, but you need to find out. You need to gain permission from them. You need to gain permission from them to interrogate them. So you're about to go to a stage of your sales pitch where you're going to be asking them some pretty deep questions, really, about their business, about numbers, about stats, about their own career, about problems. You basically, in a sense, you're going to use a technique which knocks them down, and then you build them back up again and deliver your solutions. So if you can start to, if you can ensure that you get their permission to interrogate them right at the beginning, then, if you are asking them tricky questions, it's hard for them not to answer.
I think, Paul, that's a really good point, because what we've got to do is actually move the meeting along from one stage to another. So, as you know, that's called a segue. So I want you to share with us, I'm going to put it up on screen in a second, share with us how you'd segue from the introduction to what we're calling the interrogation on that side. And as we know, for everybody, just so we're all aware that segue is spelt the correct way. SEGWAY is one of those machines you get on to ride around the city centres. So you've got that one right. But we'll check. So Paul, there you go. You got this. Here's your segue point, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I would say, these are really my words, and I would say, to make sure that this discussion is beneficial, I need to understand more about your current hiring process. Because we only have 45 minutes or an hour, is it okay if I spend a few minutes first asking a couple of questions? Are you okay with that? So, it's a little bit. Sorry, James.
I'd say it's really important you get the yes there at the end, and that's a nice soft way to actually help you elicit what's going to be some harder questions where you're asking permission for, isn't it? Yeah,
nobody's ever said no to me on that one. But it is important the way that you phrase it. Like things like this, if people want to, I know that David's and Maria, etc., in the market team have written a fantastic document that surrounds this, so people can take that. And people in our recruitment company, they print these things out and they put them on the desk so they're front of mind all the time, because these little things are really important.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So we're going over to, so we've gone through that section there on opening the people up in terms of that introduction. So nice, soft and gentle, just building a little bit of rapport, taking them through into that next section where we really start to get into the meat of it. Now, Paul, you just mentioned there that we've got, I don't know, let's say 45 minutes for this section. Are each of these next sessions relatively equal, or because you just said that?
Yeah, well, that's another thing that's important to do is, it's good to deliver structure so you can break down what you're going to deliver. So tell them what you're going to do and etc. So it's worth saying that, okay, so we'll go into a short session where I obviously find out more about your business, your current recruitment process, and that will then help me to be able to deliver my presentation more efficiently, more effectively, and then we can finish off with a questions and answers, because I'm sure things will arise where we can start making some decisions. Is that okay? Again, just qualifying that it's okay with them. Yes, it is, and then moving swiftly on. So at this point, you're probably somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes, probably 5 to 7 minutes in to your session.
And I think what's also important there, Paul, we come back to that point about control and structure. That comes back to this agenda point. So, that agenda is coming through there. So we're jumping into the next session then, which is interrogation. And what you put up here, Paul, is these are the questions that must not be answered yet. So explain these points you've got up on screen here.
Well, the last thing that you want to remember, what I said before about people like to talk, so keep asking open questions. That's the principle here. You are trying to understand what their problems are. You need to have a conversation with them, but it needs to be way 80% in their favor. You just need to keep asking questions. You need to find out what their problems are, what the challenges are, what their pain points are. And the more you do that, just if they say something, you nod, you smile, you agree. You may concur that that's a general problem in industry. That's what happens to other people. Make it feel as though what they're saying, because it generally is applicable to many, many other businesses in their situation, in their sector. So ask questions, but just be careful not to answer them. But the number one thing you can do is write them down. Have your pen and paper and just write everything that they say, write it down, because you're going to keep it for later and you're going to use it to win the business.
Okay. There's an important point I want to make there, Paul, about when you're writing down lots of answers. Again, it comes back to control and structure. And that is that if you spend too long writing the answer down and thinking of being very diligent to having listened to your prospect or client, that there can be those big silent pregnant pauses, and the client can jump in and then start to take back some of the control of that meeting. Remember, this is your meeting, not the client's meeting. So again, I think you've got to be very swift with your questions. I think you're going to sort of help us out with some of those. But these are questions which should be well practiced, well honed, and well understood by pretty much everybody on this call, I would imagine.
Absolutely. No, that's good for me, James. I think that covers that element, or the initial element of that.
Yeah. Okay. And then obviously with regard to the pain point questions, what's the logic behind those, Paul?
Well, the pain point is to make it personal to them. What are the consequences to them of things potentially going wrong? And as we go through the questions, that'll become more apparent.
Okay. And then the final part about probing deeper, what do we mean by that?
Asking why. I mean, constantly asking why. You very rarely in life get the answer at the first time of asking. You sometimes get it at the second time. You generally get it at the third time. Sometimes it needs a fourth. But we've been through this on previous webinars, in previous different elements of what we do, and understanding the true reason why they have a problem. Because people typically the prevention is cheaper than the cause and all that. A lot of time people are just addressing the problem at hand, not the root cause of a challenge. So, the recruitment company's charging me too much. Dig a little bit deeper and you'll find that it's probably because they were not aligned right at the early stage of the process, and it's their fault, not necessarily the recruitment company's, or it's the fault of the process at least. So digging deep is always really important.
I've had a couple of private comments, Paul, whilst we're doing this already. To help people remember this, we've used a very the word interrogation. Listen, it's not what we're doing here. It's a soft, as I said right at the beginning, it's what we might previously call qualification or fact finding. But we want you to remember this, so that's why we've made it a sort of very emotive word in terms of that side of things. We're not interrogating clients, but we really are trying to get underneath their skin to help them understand that we're just not like every recruiter who comes in, does very little of this. Because they just want to talk about themselves and how well they know the market and how they've got access to talent, to hidden talent and all those bits and pieces. So let's take through some of the questions that might pop up from time to time that you've got. So why don't you talk us through some of these, Paul?
I'll just choose some. I'll just choose some at random. But this is obviously I've got permission already to ask these questions, and I might pre-frame it by saying, look, what I want you to do really is and by the way, I'm not too interested in talking about the job that they have. Let's assume they have a vacancy, whatever that may be, or multiple vacancies. I'm not really interested in that at this moment in time. The chances are I probably know something about it. I might have the job spec already. But this is not about the job. This is about your process. It's a business discussion. So, how do you, or who decides when you have a recruitment need? When do you know who decides when you have a recruitment need? Who creates the job specification? So you need to know who's involved. Who manages the hiring campaign? Again, is somebody going to be coming and getting involved at a later stage that's not aligned with the rest of the team? Who's involved internally? Again, that's another similar question. How much time do they each spend on average? That's really a really, really important question. They might not know the answer. You might feel that it's possible to try and start to quantify that. It's probably
quantified that in the past, Paul, because again, I've heard you use that technique in the office with clients.
Sorry, I missed the first part there, Jim.
How have you utilised that question where you're talking about the time they spent or waste on interviewing? You've got a technique for just sort of...
It's very simple. How many vacancies do you have? How many people do you interview? of those people that you interview, how many make it to a second round, who's involved in the process, and you just start to quantify it. And obviously it's a simple mathematical equation to add that up and start to put a time against it, based on the fact that an interview usually takes an hour plus half an hour of prep before, half an hour afterwards. So you've got 2 hours, you've got 2 people, that's 4 hours. So you add it up. We've done some calculations for businesses many times, and it's actually quite scary, the amount of time that's involved, particularly if they're in interviewing 8-9 people per recruitment campaign. It's quite scary, actually. But so try and get those. The chances are they're not going to have those figures, but you're getting them to talk about it. You're getting them to think about it. How many?
Pulling them out, isn't it? It's pulling that information from them, isn't it? That's the important thing.
Extracting that information. And some people at this stage, depending on their own character, they'll quite happily volunteer this information, and you just sit and smile and nod, and that's it. Some people are hard work, and you really have to probe and get under their skin, not because they don't want to share the information with you, they might not know it, but it's just their character, that they're more introverted rather than extroverted, and it takes a little bit of working them out and warming them up to get that information.
I think it's not just introverted, Paul. I think it's just sometimes their interaction previously with recruiters has been pretty basic, and they're not expecting that type of interaction with you, so they're surprised at some of the questions, because most recruiters are just going to say, well, tell me about the people you're looking for. They'll talk about all the points in the job description because that's all they know. All of a sudden you shifted this conversation, because we've said this on numerous webinars so far. At the end of the day, we're management consultants specializing in talent acquisition to help organizations improve their hiring strategy in their industry, whatever industry it may be. So what we try and help here is help understand what's the client's overall commercial strategy in the business. We want to fit in with that, because we want to be their long-term recruitment partner. This isn't just about us picking up a vacancy today. Mm-hmm. It's about us picking up multiple vacancies over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years and more. So it's about engaging with them in a slightly different way. So
And more of the questions here, if you can try and find out about their recruitment process, which recruitment companies do you use? What do you get for your money? Are you happy with that? How many candidates do they typically send you? What do you have to do? Are they sending you videos out of interest? Not that you're going to give an answer to it, but you're just finding out. Do they come and meet with you and the rest of the team, and do they make sure that you're aligned? No, not really.
Okay. Reminded me something there, Paul. The example. I'll just make it a quick one. It's just a little one. But it's about when you said, they're still sending you videos. When I was where I was previously at in terms of working with the business, one of our, as happens, recruiters leave, don't they? They go off and set up their own businesses. Yeah. And they always try to take their clients with them. And as hard as we try, sometimes the inevitable is the client will follow the recruiter. So this happened to us, and then all of a sudden we got an opportunity to go back and talk to that client. So went along, and I'll call this recruiter John because that was his real name. And we said to this lady, we said, "How are you getting on with John?" And she said, "Oh, really good. It's we've had a long relationship now." I said, "Well, yeah, okay. So how are you getting on with the videos?" He said. She sort of looked and said, "What do you mean videos?" Okay, well never mind. But what about the behavioural assessment tools that you're using? I sort of looked at it and said, "Hang on, you're not still paying John 25% for just providing you with a CV, are you?" And she sort of said, "I don't know what you mean." I said, "Well, is that all you get from him? I mean, we've moved on so far now." Her name was Rona. And, and the reality is, all of a sudden, you can see the client saying, "Well, I think I might need to talk to you." It's nicely into a demo from that side of things. So it's interesting. Sorry, just reminded me. I went a bit.
No, it's a very valid story.
But I think the point here, Paul, with a lot of these questions that we're talking about is, these are just questions which should roll off the tongue, aren't they? These aren't. We said this list here isn't exhaustive. There should be lots more. These are all the basic things that you should have as a recruiter.
Standard questions about their problems. It's to get them to open up about their problems and their challenges, because when they give you an answer, people don't answer with yes or no. People answer with examples, and you can hear it in their voice if it's something they're happy with or it's something they're angry with. You should be. Experienced enough to be able to pick up over the telephone at least, or somebody's tone in their voice as to whether they're happy with something. It's like, we get 20 30 CVs, Paul, and I say, oh God, how does that make you feel when they land on your desk? So you're starting to drill into pain points. Paul, it's an absolute pain in the backside, to be honest, and I could do without it. I've got so much to be getting on with. And say, well, what happens to the other jobs that you're supposed to be doing? Well, they're piling up, Paul, and it's setting us back in other areas of the business, So you've got to try and make it personal, which is difficult with somebody perhaps that you've just met. again, you've got the authority and you've got the permission to interrogate them, keep using that word, but people know what I mean, a little bit deeper than what they're used to. And it's all for good reason. And it's them that's telling you. You're not putting words in the mouth. You're just asking damn good questions. And then asking them how
you've got to take damn good notes as well, Paul, there as well, isn't it, to relate it in?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can come back to
you used to have to use your mind here. This is where some of the skill of the recruiter, you're actually going to be able to take that information and convert it back in when you come into the demonstration side of it, which we're doing together. Just want to go on from those sample questions, Paul, just keep it moving on to some of the pain point questions and talking about some of those. And so we've chosen 3 topics here. There are more, of course, but just talk us through the headlines of these, and we'll go into some specific.
Well, the reason that most recruitment campaigns fall down, be it retained or contingency, is because people are not aligned in the first instance. The hiring team are not aligned with each other in terms of expectations, be it skills, knowledge, etc. The stuff we talk about in level 2 McQuaig or level 3 McQuaig, which is behaviours, etc. People are not aligned. The recruiter doesn't understand what they want. The hiring team doesn't know what they want as a collective. And the recruiter goes out and does all the work. And at some point in the process, it falls down because people are misaligned. Yeah. Very straightforward and the most common reason in my opinion. And a real pain point for people, a real pain point for hiring teams. They may not know that this is the reason, but what you're going to do is you're going to get them to agree that this is the reason, highlight it to them, and then obviously come back and give them a solution to that. The next point here is people leaving. Of course, that's a pain point for everybody. Everybody on this call at some point, it's a pain point for them. And the worst ones are the good guys that you think are happy, and they come in one morning and they hand their notice in. It's a shock to the system. It's not nice. It can be very, very expensive, and it's a real problem for companies, and it's a real problem for hiring managers that everybody in a hiring position can identify with. Yeah. So that's a huge problem. And of course, wasted time. I can't think of anything else in life that's such a waste of time, apart from my diet, than a recruitment process. I mean, there's so much wasted time. It's unfathomable. And people typically don't sit down with a pen and paper and work it out. For some reason, it boggles my mind, James, why people don't sit. They'll sit down with manufacturing and they'll look at efficiencies and so on and so forth. And you've got things such as, Six Sigma and Lean and all this kind of stuff. Nobody seems to have thought, let's have a look at our recruitment process and let's improve it without reducing the quality. That's something that everybody in this call can do.
Well, you and I, you know as well as I did, we've been working on something at the moment, you and I, just to put together and help people out with on a video. And we're talking about all of these elements from a client perspective. Because remember, we always have to consider what's in it for me from the client side of things. And this is a great way to elicit some of that information from them that makes them feel, this is pain they weren't necessarily feeling. It's not tangible pain, or it wasn't. We're trying to make it tangible by sharing them with that their process is flawed. From that side, we're trying to highlight it out. So I think we've got some examples here coming up of how we'd pull them out, and we've got some relations. So talk us through this one.
Okay, so for the moment, if people just ignore what's written in the orange semicircle there, the question: have you ever had a situation where all of your colleagues have interviewed a candidate and can't agree on moving them to the next stage of the process? That's a common problem. It happens all the time, and people just put it down to c'est la vie. That's how it goes. That's not how it goes. That's how you think it goes. And then, of course, ultimately, on the left-hand side there, we'll use the recall method, as I know you like to call it, James, to hit the topic of McQuaig and the McQuaig job survey. And that's how we're going to demonstrate how we alleviate this problem. But we're bringing this problem. We're not telling them that it's a problem. We're asking them if it's ever been a problem for them, or if it's a problem for them at this moment in time. They will expand on it. People don't typically give you yes or no answers. They'll say yes, and they'll give you an example, or they'll talk about it, or they'll ask for clarification, and you'll endorse that, and you'll tell them that, of course, they're not on their own. This happens to many, many companies, and it's quite typical. Don't talk about McQuaig yet. Again, I know I'm reiterating it, but it's important not to talk about anything, any of your solutions just yet. Just keep empathizing, sympathizing, whatever you want to call it. Keep
So
agreeing.
I was just going to reinforce, and you're right to say that the piece that's in the bullet, we know what this is about, and the whole point of asking this question, and also, Paul, you just start to talk about some of the follow-up questions of this. We're going to come to in a slide or two's time, just to sort of say how we elaborate on this question and bring some more information out that's going to make it personal, as you mentioned.
Absolutely, yeah.
We know that what we're doing is we're using this as a setup question. That's what the pain points are. To help the client identify that they just told us, yeah, here's a problem. I didn't realize the problem, but yeah, it is. We do actually go around the houses too often on this side of things. So
you might ask them though, James. I mean, in terms of sort of running commentary on it, you might ask them, how does that make them feel when that happens? Have you ever been in a situation where, so that if the answer is, well, yeah, quite actually, it happens quite a lot. How do you feel about when that, how does it make you feel? What are the consequences of this happening? So you're constantly asking probing pain point questions anyway.
And one of the things, when should this question be asked for?
It can be asked. It can be asked throughout. I mean, you want to get it in at some point before you go into actually sort of showing them the system, etc., and then talking them through your process. But it can come wherever you feel comfortable asking it. It could come right at the beginning when you're talking about rapport. You might ask them a question. How are things with you at this moment in time? Oh God, I've had a busy week, Paul. I've been interviewing non-stop. But let me guess, you've been interviewing candidates that you can't agree on moving forward with because there's a bit of misalignment in the company. God, how did you know, Paul? Well, listen, it happens to everybody. So you've got it. You've got that in at the rapport stage in the first minute of the conversation, if you want. So if that's how it develops and manifests itself. But certainly as you're asking these probing, fact-finding, interrogating questions, try and drop, one or two of these. And just to be clear to everybody, what we're doing here is we're kind of bombarding you with lots and lots of information. You wouldn't necessarily ask every single question on every single call, but you may take one or two things that you like.
Here's another example, Paul.
Yeah, again, this is at some point going to wind back to McQuaig again and the job fit as to why people leave. But have you ever had a situation where a good employee left you unexpectedly? Oh God, you get that horrible feeling in your gut, and how do you deal with it, and how does it make you feel? What's the impact on your business? What are the consequences? What do you have to do to rectify it? Oh, I have to go through a recruitment process. God, you have to pay Michael Page 25%. Yeah. Oh God, right. So you want to be doing all you can to try and ensure that people stay. But again, we come back to that a little bit later.
And I think that's quite important because, one of our favourite phrases is that people hire on skills and experience and fire on behaviours. Sometimes people push back and say, well, no, I haven't fired them. They left unexpectedly. I thought they were good. And the client, or the employer thought, oh, they were a good employee, but actually they were a misfit.
Yeah.
I speak from personal experience on that one, where I know it's not necessarily the case that, a good candidate leaves and it's a surprise. But they just weren't happy in the role because it wasn't quite what they expected.
Well, there's a if you use the word fire, but it's failure's probably people hire on skills and knowledge, but people leave because it's failed, hasn't it? They've been fired or they've left of their own accord. But either way, if it's in a short period of time, they've failed. If it's after 2 or 3 years, everybody's probably had the money's worth, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay. And this one.
So this is moving away from McQuaig, but this is a leading question which you'll come back to about video and key facts. Have you ever had a candidate turn up for an interview and in the first 5 minutes it's not going anywhere? Yeah. Everybody, all the time, all the time. And you can empathy, they'll probably laugh and they'll say, yeah, God, of course I have. But I said, look, me too, all the time, all day, every day. I'd never advise you become a recruiter then if this winds you up. So, you can put a little bit of humour in there as well at the right time. But yeah, I mean, this is a basic question. You know the answer. You're guaranteed an absolute yes. If you think it's going to be a no, don't ask it. And then, of course, we've got it on screen, but there should be no mention of anything else here until later. And another example there, James, for key competency questions. Have you ever conducted an interview based on their CV where you think they tick all the right boxes, but when you probe an interview, you find that they don't really have sufficient skills or experience? And that happens all the time, doesn't it, to us recruiters? And it happens to, especially when people are working on a contingency basis where it's the aim of the recruitment consultant to sell them a candidate because that's the situation that they find themselves in. And sure, the candidate, I've looked at the job spec, Mr. Client, and I've checked the candidate's CV. We've had a really good conversation, best candidate you could ever find. They've got bags of experience in what you're looking for. And the candidate turns up And so can you tell me a little bit more about your experience on Excel then? Because that's a lad. Oh, well, I once logged on to my daughters and helped her with the homework, It's not quite what we were expecting, but that does happen, and that's a crude example. But
and again, we're going to recall these back. So Paul, how would you summarise that discussion with them, and how you're actually done a lot of validation with them? You've sought permission, etc. You've got some questions up there to use to help support those, haven't you?
Yeah, well, yeah. So, what are the consequences of that for you? Why would, if we're talking about, this one might come a little bit later, James, because we'll talk about the calculator and quantifying costs and things like that. But, going back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago in terms of the amount of commercial downtime that is seen in a recruitment process, if you are able to sort of roughly or broadly quantify that with them there and then, and you can say, right, okay, so we've worked out here that each new hire costs you, 42 man hours at £500 an hour, etc. We're looking at 21 grand. What would the FD say if they knew that? And again, that's a question that you and I, when we were preparing this, James, you were a little bit reluctant to put in because you don't want to take it too personal. And I agree with that. But if it's the right place, it's the right time, you've got the right rapport, and they're having a good old whinge about their company and their process, then maybe it's the right time to drop that one in.
I don't mean personal, Paul. I think so. It depends on how well developed that relationship is. If it's still a bit... Yeah. Go personal too soon, and you can actually just get the opposite way on that. That's what.
Absolutely agreed. Would your time be better spent elsewhere doing other things? I mean, it's the bane of most people's lives, isn't it? I'm a sales director and I want to go out and sell products. I don't want to be recruiting people. I've not been to recruitment school. It's not what I signed up for, but it's just part of what they have to do. Even HR, if you ask HR about what they do, unless it's proper talent acquisition, but most companies don't have that. They're there to do contracts, and they're there to see that people are fitting well in the work environment, etc. And obviously they outsource recruitment, so they don't see themselves doing it. But it's a pain in the backside because they use contingency. They're inundated with recruiters and all of the problems that it causes. So we've got to kind of find a way to make them realise that the consequences. What are the consequences for them? Because if it's an MD, it could be bottom line, or an FD, for example. It could be their livelihood, it could be their business. If it's somebody in HR, it could be that they're not getting the promotion they're looking for because they're just not getting the right people through. So what's in it for me? We talk about that all the time, and you've got to, if you can, try and find out what's important to the person that you're pitching to.
Now, we spent a long time here, Paul, talking about the qualification side, the interrogation side, as we call it. Because it's so important, because you can't shortcut on this one either. You've got to make sure this is right, because this is what's going to separate you and differentiate you as a me-only recruiter rather than me-too recruiter who's running with the herd, just asking the same old questions and offering the same old platitudes, if you like. So,
I mean, the recruiters from the consultants, that's what it's going to separate.
Absolutely. So let's move on. Let's talk about how you then move from this section into the next section, which is the demonstration or the presentation, if you like. So here's your segue points up here. So why don't you just tell me how you actually pitch that to me?
Well, there's two parts to this. So you can summarise, which I suppose we'll come back to, but I'll take a breath for a second and I'll let people read these for themselves because it's quite clear to read on screen.
And this is meant to be, Paul. I mean, you can take a breath and you can grab a glass of water or whatever you need. This time. Again, is this script, if you like, is actually in the document that we sent around to you earlier on this week. So you've probably seen it if you've already read it. If you haven't read it, please do get access to it. And again, it's just showing how you move from one section to another. And here again, we're asking for permission. And it's really important that you ask for this permission so that, when you do come back later on to do the comparison, as we're going to come back to, then again, the client should be expecting it because they've already agreed it. So I think it moves from there. So then we're going to come into the demo itself. And I say we're not going into the demo today, but
just one point, James, on that I think is really important. And this is something that I've picked up from Plamen, my business partner, over many, many years, and that is summarising. I mean, Plamen summarise. Those people who know Plamen, probably everybody, knows that he summarises everything, and I think it's really, really valuable, especially in this case. And that is to say, so let's just gather my thoughts on where we are at this moment in time, Mr. Client. So far, you've told me that you are frustrated with your current process because you receive too many CVs from too many recruitment consultants. You are currently paying Michael Page 25%, and you feel as though you're being ripped off. Yeah, A, B, C. So you go through all of the elements. So is that a fair summary? Yes, it is, Paul. That's fair. Oh, I'd also add this, or I'd just change that. So then you've got it's like when we do the background and requirements. It's a blueprint, isn't it? It's clear. There's no ambiguity as to what's being discussed, and that then sets you up for the questions that you had on screen a minute ago, James. Just one more thing. Just one more thing before we move forward. People are the most important part of your business. How has your business changed in the last 15 years? Would you agree? Would you agree? Yes, yes, yes. And then I suppose finally, as we move into the demo, and this is still part of that segue, we've already got there. Sorry, James, just moving forward again to your other screen. That's the one. Again, just clarify that now we're going to go into a demonstration, and what we're going to start to do is we're going to start to use the recall method and use all of this lovely information that we've now got, which we could have only ever dreamed about getting when we used to be contingency recruitment consultants, and we've now got all their problems all listed, and the person on the other line is, depending on how good you are, potentially in tears, thinking, God, geez. Another thing that you can do here, James, I'm not sure if it's going to come on another slide or not, but is the calculator. The bad hire calculator is a really important element here as well. So if they're not sure what their new employee retention rates are, because that's a question that you would have asked, then of course it's time to go and take them into that. If you feel it's appropriate, it's not always appropriate. Their problem might not be holding on to people. It might be finding people in the first place. It might be that they have to interview 100 people to find one. That's a problem, and it doesn't all necessarily need to be about retention. The calculator might not be that relevant, nor might McQuaig or whatever.
Just on the calculator, Paul, because I know we spoke about another one, the recruitment process audit, the bad hire calculator. Yeah, I actually think it's also it's part of that segue conversation, because a demo, we sometimes think of actually going into the platform, but what can lead, again, if it's appropriate, what can lead you into that is the show and tell of the calculator, and then the natural question of the client. Well, how can you save me so much money? And that's when you'd lead into the demo. So again, the 3 points you've got up on screen here, really about then taking the pain points, going back to those that recall, we say, recalling with them, you told me this, here's how we covered it. And then you turn a basic feature, because for example, video is a basic feature, but turning it into a benefit because the client can recognize, because that would save me time. I wouldn't have somebody turn up who I realize just isn't going to fit in with my team. That alignment of situation. We're not going to go around the houses as a team again and actually find that two of us like him and two of us don't. So we go back to square one, or somebody's compromised and can't wait for the person to fail. So those bits and pieces. And what's Paul as well?
Yeah, and as we're going into the demo, another great question to ask, and you can do it in a few different ways, but it's to say, right, okay, so I'm gonna show you our online presentation now, our delivery platform. What I'd like to ask is, as I go through each element, I'd like you to consider how different this is to what you typically experience with Michael Page, if that's who they've told you they work with. And if it's somebody that's in HR and you're starting to build a good rapport with them, and you might drop a caveat to say, in addition, I'd be really interested in your feedback, as somebody who deals with a lot of recruiters, hires a lot of people. This is our platform as a delivery platform. I'd really be interested in your feedback as well, because we're always looking to make improvements, so on and so forth. And people generally like to help anyway. You blow a little bit of smoke, and sometimes it comes back. Yeah. So.
All right, good. And at the point I just want to make at the bottom there, Paul, we've got a lot of features in the platform, and I know sometimes it can seem very overwhelming to people, not just us when we're learning this, but actually to clients when they see it first time around. So don't labour on every, don't try and take people through every specific point, if that's the case.
No, because currently you probably, if this has gone quite well, so, God, James, we're at 45 minutes in. But normally this probably takes about 20 minutes.
Checking whether people got an extra 10, 15 minutes.
Hey, they can leave us if they want to watch it back. But hopefully people will stick around, because we'll do some questions and answers as well. But we're probably only 10 minutes away from finishing anyway. But just basically, you're not going to show them everything in the system, and we're not going to do a demo today. So I think that covers that. James, we'll move on.
You've done a demo, you've done a great demo, and again, you're into the bit now where you're going to do the close. And the close is where you're actually going to sort of take some of those.
I know we are pushed for time, but on the demo, it is really important that when you show them different elements. So if we take let's say we take an element like the video, for example. So you'd play the video, and then you'd stop it and you'd say, what are your thoughts? And typically people have not really recruited with video before, or you might ask them, have you recruited with video before? No, well, let me play it for you and let me give you a sample. So you play 30 seconds of the demo video. Then you ask them, so what are your thoughts? And 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, people will say, oh yeah, actually, I quite like that, Paul. That's pretty interesting. If there's 2 people in a room, they sit and they nod and they smile and they're thinking, oh, this is good. And do you do this with every candidate, Paul? Yeah, of course we do. This is part of our delivery method. Right, okay, so do you like that? Yeah, oh, yeah, we quite like that. Why do you like it? Well, it gives us it gives us a first impression, doesn't it, really? And I say, yeah, of course it does, yeah. Why would that be important to you, Mr. Client, to receive a first impression? And I said, obviously, Paul, we get to see them before they come and meet with us. So, perhaps if you've got 5 candidates on your shortlist, perhaps we'd only choose to meet with 2 or 3. And so, yeah, absolutely. And our clients, your social proof, our clients absolutely give us the feedback that is what happens. And why do you think that would be of benefit to you? Well, that's going to save us time, Paul. So again, people who know me know that I always talk about this. It always leads to time. It always leads to money in one way, shape or form. So it's asking them why 2 or 3 times. The same thing with McQuaig. If you're talking about the video, you say, look, do you believe then that this would, you mentioned that it sometimes takes you 10 or 15 interviews to actually find the person that you want. And you also mentioned to me right at the beginning of the call that you've had a bad week this week because all you've done is interview irrelevant candidates. Do you think this would help? Oh yeah, absolutely it would help. So all that information that I took at the beginning, I'm now starting to use it to my advantage. Because if I didn't ask that question, I didn't know what kind of a week they'd had, I didn't know what the problems would be, I'd just be saying, oh, we do some videos. And who really gives the monkeys? Yeah, there's no benefit to them. So you work the benefit in. The same with McQuaig. We'll show them the McQuaig job surveys and how it aligns and how we go in and we get under the skin of what it is that they're looking for as a team. So, you mentioned to me, Mr. HR manager or Mr. Director, that you have a lot of candidates that come through, and at the final stages, there's always somebody in the team that doesn't quite like them, and it doesn't end up moving forward. You said that's quite a frustration for you. Do you think now that we would align expectations that would mitigate that either in its entirety or for a large portion? Oh, absolutely, Paul. Yeah, I would like that. That would be fantastic. And you said that you spend a lot of time going through that kind of exercise, and we worked out that it's going to cost you £21,000. So do you think there's going to be a cost saving involved with that as well? Oh God, Paul. Yeah, absolutely. I can see it working. I really like this. And that's what you're doing. So to save time today, we won't go into any more elements, but same with key competencies, same with the blueprint, same with referencing. Everything that we do on the system is a time or money saver, and you've got to get them to identify the problems, and then you do the recall method to work it back into them.
And once you've done that, Paul, so we're at the situation now where, the client should be, chomping at the bit really to sort of say, let me have it now. But you've still got to be professional and close it. So let's go through the close. We've got a 3-part close here. Asking them, do they like it? Asking them about...
So a summary, James, a summary of... So again, let me get this right. What we've gone through is video, McQuaig, key competencies, blueprint, this. We can sign in from anywhere, anytime. And you like this, you're like, yeah, absolutely, Paul, I agree with that. Fantastic. And I go a little bit further. Which 2 or 3 elements do you particularly like more than anything else? Oh, I like the video. Brilliant. So further, they're telling you why they're going to become your next client. It's brilliant. And then finally, I can see what you've put on the screen. Is there any reason why you wouldn't use us to recruit this role? And of course, guess what comes next? They always want to know how much it's going to cost. That's fine, an absolutely legitimate question. Or another question you've got there, James, based on what I've shown you today, how does it compare to our current recruitment process, which I mentioned before? Again, you do that as part of your summary. So it comes down to money. So a typical question, how much is this going to cost me, Paul? Say, well, based on the fact that you paid 25% to Michael Page and to cut to the chase, you can't stand them. How much more do you think our process is worth? And you've got the results from the calculator potentially. You've quantified how much time and money they're spending on this recruitment. It almost is a little bit of a no-brainer, and the penny drops for them, and they almost laugh and they say, well, it's worth at least the same, or it's worth more, or something like that. And then you move into negotiation. Well, look, let me tell you what our fees are. Our fees are 30% of the candidate's annual salary. And in addition, and please, I'd like you to write this down, we offer an up to 12-month replacement policy. And for a role like this, I'd be absolutely more than happy to give you a 6-month replacement policy. That means that if anybody leaves for any reason, you fire them, or they come to you one day and they decide to leave, give me a call and we go and we recruit this position for you completely free of charge to the same level. How does that sound? Yeah, so you're closing them, you're moving it away from money, you're moving it into other elements, and providing...
You've got to share with them as well, probably your process. So we've got here the process, which is all about the fact we're retained, to address that again, because again, they may have had situations where they bought retained before, didn't work for them, had that bad experience. But if you've just demonstrated that campaign, they should see the work, and you should be able to challenge them. Why didn't your company do retainers? It's company policy. Why is it company policy? Well, we did it before and it didn't work. Why didn't it work? Well, we never got the candidate. Okay. Well, what was their process?
Yeah, well, you just work it back. Yeah, you just work it back again. You might have to ask why 6 or 7 times because you're unwinding a process. But what it'll be is, well, the recruiter never really understood. They never got the right candidates. They never really understood what we're looking for. Yeah. Well, brilliant. So we're now going to understand what you're looking for. You've agreed with it 25 times. So what's the problem? And look, you don't win them all. Let's be honest. You don't win them all. Not every pitch is perfect, so on and so forth. But if I get in front of a company that's got a genuine vacancy, then my ratio is in excess of 80%.
Yeah. And what we're talking about here, Paul, as well is, when we talk about commercials, say them with pride. But the bit we're saying to people here is, you've summarised your position, you've sought permission throughout the way, you've got a quantifiably, high value proposition that people are going to see and say, yeah, okay, is it worth 25%? Well, you're currently paying 20% or 15%. Look where it's getting you. Yeah. And that question you had, and I know hopefully people wrote this one down, is, well, based on what I've shown you today, how much more do you think our process is worth than your current process? And you're moving them up. And again, in the document that we shared with people, we spoke about, listen, they move up, but negotiation is about win-win. You can't slide down the path and give everything back. You can't come down from 30 to 20% in 12 months. You can come from 30 to 25 and go from 12 to 6 or whatever it is you want to do. Your choice is here. But if you come from 30 in 12 months down to 25 in 12 months, you were just trying to rip me off at 30 in 12 months, weren't you?
Yeah, and we charge, you've got to make it clear as well, which I probably failed to do then, but we're charging 3 stages, and there's benefits to that as well. That can improve your cash flow. We're not asking you for a lump sum all at once, so on and so forth. But that's what you can even have a little bit of fun with it, and you can say, well, how much are you currently paying? At the beginning of the call, we pay 16%. Yeah. Okay, and then when they ask you, well, how much do you charge? So, well, I've got some good news for you, some super good news. The good news is we actually were substantially cheaper than 16%. We only charge 28%. And they go, well, how do you work? I said, well, here's your cost. This is what it's currently costing you. And this is what it's going to cost you if you work with us. And we're giving you the replacement policy as well. That's money where our mouth is. And then you're moving on to other things that they may agree to sign. You may do a virtual shake of hands or whatever, but you may move on to other things. And the next part is, thank you, Debbie McGee, is the follow-up. And this is really, really important, because if you're on a remote call, they're not going to sign there and then. You've probably not got the paperwork with you. So it's always going to be a case of following up. And people get this thing called buyer's remorse, where, when you're in their office and everything's going good, you're the best thing since sliced bread. But by the time they've done the rest of the day, they've gone home, the kids are crying, one thing and another, they come back to work, they've forgotten half of what you discussed, and all of a sudden it's, well, it is a retainer, we'd have to pay money up front, etc. So it's really important to have this follow-up and to continuously, I wouldn't say bombard, but continuously deliver them with information, stay top of mind, deliver value. Oh, by the way, I've had my team draft a very brief but informative candidate pack, which we can make better. We've taken some images from your website, we've taken the job spec you sent to me, we've put a draft McQuaig behavioural profile in, and this is the document that we're going to send to candidates as soon as we're engaged, to give that professional feel and professional look. Oh, fantastic. So, that's something you can send to them. It's co-branded. It looks great. What I'd also like to send to you, if it's okay, is I know that there's yourself, the MD and the sales director in the process. Free of charge, with your permission, I'd like to send you a McQuaig job survey. No obligation, whether you choose to work with us or not. This is for you to keep and for you to identify, the problems that you had around aligning with each other. This will go some way to solving that problem. May I send you that for free? Oh yeah, please, Paul. Great. Well, as soon as I get the results back, I'll give you some feedback. And then all of a sudden, 3 days later, they're misaligned and you're on a call with them, advising them, consulting them, working with them. You've got the job. They may not have signed the contract with you. You've got the job. The next one is, of course, I mean, it's a little bit further down the line there, but in no particular order, the retained recruitment proposal. So if you have got enough information to write to them, to understand their challenges, then which you will have because you've got these mega notes that you've written down, then you're going to be able to write back to them and understand where their problems are and how you're going to resolve them. And even something as ridiculous as picking up your phone and just dropping them a message a couple of days later, say, hey, listen, I've got my guys working on a candidate pack. That's going to be over to you by 4 o'clock this afternoon. Love to get some feedback from you. All the very best. Something as simple as that. It makes a difference. You're in front of them. You're delivering value. And if they don't sign up with you after that, then they ain't going to sign up with anybody. So send them some CVs. No, I'm kidding.
Don't.
It's a joke.
Well, listen, what I just want to take you through is to summarise, because I've talked about that a lot today. I just want to share with you what we shared with you as we just bring this to a close. So if you've got any questions, now's the time to pop them in your box, in the chat box. So the reality is it's preparation. So, get yourself ready, know your prospect, and make sure you put in place some structure. Go into the intro. The intro is fairly quick and fairly brief, but people buy for people they like. So make sure you humanise this, personalise this, and take a bit of time to break the ice. The client wants to like you, so give them a reason to like you. And then you're just going to cement that by actually going into the interrogation or the qualification or the fact finding, where we're going to ask lots and lots of questions. We're going to summarize those questions. We're going to write them and document them down. We're not going to give any answers to things which we know are specifically revolved around the pain points, because we want to use the recall method when we're doing the demonstration to sort of get them through. So again, you're segueing from each point to each point. But on the demonstration, yes, you're pitching your proposition. You've got to know your way around your platform. You've got to know what to do. Don't laboriously go through every single item if you don't think it's relevant. Use your judgment. But what you're doing then is you're going back to each of the pain points. So every time you see a feature of the intro platform, there's a hidden benefit in there somewhere. And if you've done your interrogation right, then you're going to have all your set of questions in place. You're going to recall it and make the client appreciate that what you've got is something very different. And then finally, you're going to wrap up on the commercials by closing it. So you're going to ask them if they like what they've seen. You're going to share them your process, the fact it's retained, it's done in 3 parts, whatever it is. And you're going to share with them your fees and be proud of the fees you charge. Believe it or not, the problem with most fees is in your head. It's not in the client's head. Think about the last time you bought an expensive product. You put a situation in your mind where you thought it's worth it. There's always a cheaper product. So from that side of things, you've got to move it through. And make sure you do the follow-up and think about all of the documents that you can put in place there. So that's what we've got done from that side of things. Appreciate you all staying with us, for a little bit longer than we'd anticipated. We're a little bit 3 minutes before the hour, so we've got a couple of minutes left because we're going to need to jump off and let you get on with the rest of your day. Enjoy the rain or whatever it may be. But any questions, please put them in there. So I've just got some little bits and pieces in the box because we're now into questions. Anything you want to add, Paul?
No, I think that's fine. Thank you to Plamen for his 20 comments as we've been going along. People have been reading, endorsing what we're saying. But no, of course, James, if anybody on the call wants some one-to-one time with any of us, then we'd be more than happy with that. You and I are obviously working on a video at this moment in time, so I don't want to disclose too much, but that's going to be something that everybody will be able to use to help them with their marketing, their pitching, their follow-up, etc. And their learning. So no, but again, of course, hope everybody's safe and well at this moment in time, and thanks to everybody for coming on and listening to you and I waffle on for an hour.
Good stuff. Well, listen, we'll make sure we provide all the documentation to everybody who's requested it, but they'll also go out and be stored electronically somewhere in the cloud, and we'll get that all through to you. And we'll look forward to seeing you all next week. Thanks very much, everybody. All the best and have a great one.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.